Good to go? All right. Next slide, please, or potato, rather. Up next, we have Tom Munckton talking about opening brand, unlocking the power of brand to accelerate growth. Tom joins us from the UK, and fun fact, he secretly, even though I guess it's not much of a secret anymore, secretly does not know a single thing about Web3. So please welcome Tom to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thanks for revealing my top secret. Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I'm going to talk you through a few things that we've learned, I guess, in the last 18 months. I'm Tom, and I'm going to learn how to use a clicker. There we go. I'm a creative director of a brand practice in London called Fold 7 Design. I'm also part of a wider creative agency, also called Fold 7. That's as complex as it's going to get, I promise. Here are some contact details. We have a little microsite white paper of some of the stuff I'm talking about today, so please take a look at that. We'd love to show you some of that stuff. Do hit me up on Telegram as well if you want to talk a bit more about brand afterwards, or in fact during, if you just want me to shut up and sit down, that's fine. And that's our page as well. We'd love you to take a look at that. If you've come to NEARCON in the past, you might have noticed there's quite a shift this year in the experience of the Near brand and also of NEARCON. In the last 18 months, we've been working with the team at Near to develop their brand identity system. And so very much in the spirit of the open web, today we'd love to invite you into that process a little bit more and shed a bit of light on how a great brand identity system can really accelerate your growth. And we'll finish with a few things that hopefully you'll find useful to take forwards, perhaps into your own branding project too. And then after that, I'm possibly going to invite Jack Collier up to ask a few questions about the process from his perspective. So why the need to invest in your brand identity? Well, there are countless data points around how visually strong, distinctive, consistent brands create growth and competitive advantage. And it's a particularly potent exercise to do at moments of inflection in an organization. So if you're about to launch a big product, if you're pivoting your outfit, if you're scaling up, or even perhaps trying to regain your place in the market, it's a really important thing and a really cool thing to do at that point. So what do we mean by brand identity exactly? And I suppose, given the crushing number of logos just in this ecosystem alone, it would be easy to imagine that it was just about logos and maybe some fancy colors. But logos are, of course, a massive part of the puzzle. But great brand identity is about a lot more beneath. So for Near, we've tried to create a holistic brand identity system. And by this, I mean we've wanted to visually connect and make distinctive every interaction you could have with the Near brand, whether it's on the swag you just bought downstairs or the physical experience or the online experience. But everything needs to connect. And Near, as a pioneering blockchain operating system, looking after the needs of many brands and developers and creators, it's very much a system needing a system. The successful brand system should really give the organization room to grow, room to adapt, perhaps shift, and really importantly, play as well. And we're going to show you a few bits of how the system kind of underneath all this works for Near. One of the core things we did was create what we've called the infinite canvas, which is a kind of ever-scaling grid of possibilities, and it provides a structure for the brand and the community to explore really however they want in a multitude of ways. You probably see quite a few examples of how this grid is deployed here today. Whatever the content, whatever the occasion, the canvas in itself acts as a visual manifestation for the Near brand. So not just the logo, but the grid beneath it becomes something symbiotic with the brand itself. Connecting things a bit further, the infinite canvas is actually made from grid points that inherit the DNA of the NEAR symbol. And to just briefly talk about the symbol, there's a point around like taking stock of what you've got. If you already have a mark, perhaps you did it quite quickly at the beginning of a project. Really think about whether you've garnered, if there's kind of value baked into it that you could take forwards. We found with the NEAR symbol there was a strong sense of recognition that had been built by the group already. Stylistically, it's very strong and expansive. The infinity symbolism that's kind of baked in there links to a sort of feeling of permanence. Subconsciously, perhaps delivers a feeling of trust, which is really useful. And the fact that we don't see the shape connect as well is quite interesting. It feels like it falls into the distance, which delivers, again, on a subconscious level, that layer of possibility. Where does this symbol, where does this mark take us to? And quite frankly, the symbol was absolutely everywhere. And it's kind of cool to see how the community has already used this symbol, adopted it, maneuvered around it, and done all sorts of cool stuff with it. So it felt like a really amazing thing to kind of keep in the mix. But we very much wanted to use it as a catalyst to open up a far more expressive system and build much deeper recognition. So as I say, besides the grid points, besides that infinite canvas, we also looked at other things, like, for example, a bespoke icon suite. It's a brand that talks a lot about information, uses a lot of information. Those icons are really useful to, again, just reinforce and link back to the stylistic feeling of the symbol. And also a open source, hopefully soon to be on the chain font. I'm looking at Jack and he's smiling and putting his thumb up, which means we've got the green light. On a open source font in the works currently, again, with all of those moments and interest, but baked in from the symbol. And getting these things right on a deeper level has really helped aid adoption and engagement across the community. And I think it's fair to say we haven't even really scratched the surface of its full potential. And it's kind of interesting to do this exercise on screen here as well. When you get to the point and you have motion principles and you have identity assets, to just lay it out on a page as well and just understand the overall atmosphere of the brand. It's really it's an important and cool thing to do. The risk of not viewing the brand as a whole, perhaps thinking of it as a few singular parts rather than a deeper system, is that the brand can disintegrate as it works its way across comms and through brand touchpoints. So if you imagine the most famous mark on the planet relied only on itself alone, you really never know quite what you're going to see and then potentially unsee in different places. So a brand is a set of expectations, memories, relationships that taken together account for a consumer's decision to choose one product or service over another. Quite an expansive quote, but Seth is right. But how do we maybe make it a bit more tangible? So what can branding do? Well, a great brand program can create value. It's really important, obviously, that a brand is not a vanity exercise and it creates value. But unlike other marketing pursuits, branding is typically quite difficult to measure. So don't expect instant ROI. But if we, for example, look at a very famously successful rebrand, Airbnb, for example, there was a marked shift in the valuation post the rebrand. And so that could be attributed to a bunch of different factors. But the rebrand itself really just helped shift a gear or two for the organization. It can also, of course, create clarity. And again, using Airbnb as an example, their branding very much gave them clarity of purpose and propelled the team forwards. What started as a strategic thought, belong anywhere, became a strong enough statement that it could be used consumer-facing. So that's a cool thought too, right? Is that you're not just making things that exist in a document for yourselves, that you use verbiage and language that you feel good to put outwardly too. And I guess in the case of Airbnb, more than speaking just for the business, it also spoke to the category. And that leads me to the next point around a great brand system can, of course, build trust and connection with your audience. And again, with Airbnb, the feeling that this was a new component of travel that hadn't been explored yet and hadn't been pressure tested, that it was a mark, this feeling of trust was conveyed, that it felt that it was for the community, and then it built it from there. And the fact that the mark can be drawn by hand, for example, everyone, it's a universal mark, is also, creates that for all feeling. Another thing that brand can do, and it seems much more minor, but is increase efficiency, and that sounds really boring. I'm noticing some people are falling asleep already. That's excellent. But how can we make that a bit more exciting? Well, I think if you've invested in a deeper, richer brand system, you'll have the tools at hand to make more varied communications. So actually, it's really useful to think, rather than a laborious 150-page brand guideline that somebody might give you, a good program will simply have tested and stretched the limits of these tools. Doing this answers like a ton of questions of possible scenarios that the marketing team might have for the system and how it might be used. And it's a really efficient thing to do rather than invest in something really time-consuming. So for example, with the NEARCON identity that you're experiencing today, my team just spent a huge amount of effort stretching and testing all the possible scenarios that the team could possibly find. It's so cool today to see quite a few of those have come to life. Hopefully there's no spoilers here. I don't think so. Final one, the really important one, is that a good brand system can, of course, make you seem different. You might not be different necessarily, but you might be able to seem different. It's probably the biggest thing a brand can do, and it's where most of the energy should really be spent. I think there's an interesting thing about the fact that everyone talks about the Apple logo, the Apple brand system being so simple, so memorable. It's useful that they're so well known already because it really just looks like everything else right now. Yet the funny thing is, it used to look like that, and colorful, distinctive, accessible, a bit weird, kind of garish even. But the thing is, at the time, it would have been sat next to that stiff crew there, so it would have really cut through. So it's always worth thinking about how to, go a little bit beyond the codes of your particular sector. And we did a similar exercise with Near in that we observed the codes in the space, and I guess at the time of our looking, the landscape was full of a kind of dark mode, sci-fi dystopia, maybe still is, and that was met with more than a bent towards a sort of nostalgic, perhaps video gaming reference points. Like it or loathe it. This is kind of the world that had been created around it. So it was interesting to us to understand these codes and understand which ones we could subvert, which ones we could push a little bit beyond, which one could be challenged, I suppose. So before I sit down and shut up, and I promise I will, are there some extra things that we can give you today that are just a little bit beyond the things perhaps you could search for yourselves in a brand process? And so here's a couple of things I think that we always find really useful at Fold 7 to kind of bring into the process. Invite the novice. And I said at the beginning, I don't know squat about Web3. And I could probably write in the back of a napkin everything I knew about it at the beginning of the project. But if you just have a team of category experts around a brand problem, you're just going to get something that's right for the category. So by being a novice, you're kind of an empty vessel, and you just learn the most necessary factors to consider in your identity. And you also might, in a way, behave like perhaps an audience segment that you haven't explored yet, who might know less about what you're talking about. So invite the novice along. And how to do it, it's really easy, actually. You just invite somebody that knows jack shit about what you're doing. This one is make it uncomfy, because, if it feels too comfy, you need to move on. If everything falls into place too easily, it means that, you haven't wrestled with it a little bit, or perhaps even sometimes you haven't, it's okay to not like something initially. Because if it does, it just means it's fitting in and you're judging it by the standards of what's already there. So whether or not it's your bag, the London 2012 mark, for example, 10 years ago, at the time, crazy press, everyone thought it was horrible. And then you look at it again 10 years on and you go, kind of stands out, something quite different. And how to do it? Well, I mean, the main thing is to have the bravery to do it, but also spot when something is on strategy and feels really exciting versus something off strategy and is just really shit or funny. And the final one for us, and this is something we talk about quite a lot, is take with you the communication mindset. So remember that brand is not the end point. It just sets up the success of everything thereafter. So how to do it? I mean, it's really, as I say, all about testing, on all types of media and communications. So, thanks very much. There's that page again, some logos, a couple of QRs. We'd love you to hit some of those up. Look at our page. Thank you very much. Jack, how have I done? I've got 4 minutes 48. What do you think? Should we have a chat? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
See, I told you it was 15.
I think you did a good job. That was great.
Too speedy. Just love to ask you a couple of questions, really, if it's possible. I guess I don't really know what prompted the original feeling, that moment of needing to, use a bit more brand thinking and move into your brand more.
Sure. Well, I joined the NEAR Foundation and the NEAR ecosystem back in May 2022. And I came to the same conclusions that you guys came to independently with the look of the space. It's very like dark mode, futuristic, very, with the NFT and collectibles culture, very centric on like video games and things like that. And basically 99% of every project in Web3 kind of looked like that. And so, NEAR, I saw, was sort of falling into that category. We had this concept of like the unlimited desert and building in the desert. And my thinking was like, who builds cities in a desert, And that's not really very accessible and very open, and we were kind of falling in with the crowd. So that's really what prompted me. Really, other than the logo and the logo itself, and also the NEAR typeface, nothing else was quintessentially NEAR. And so, as you correctly mentioned, when it came to creating, things for events or swag or creative anything, I could put all that stuff side by side, and you would just not know it was NEAR at all. It was just very disparate. And I found that, again, with lots of other projects within the ecosystem. And then I guess the third thing is, we believe a lot in decentralization and wanting to empower our ecosystem to do things on our behalf. And I think that's where a design system is really important, even more so than in Web 2, because you need to give those projects the tools to be able to then leverage them themselves in a consistent way. And so, I really wanted to sort of bring some of that Web 2 design thinking into Web 3 so that we can really benefit from all of the advantages that it can bring, and bring that consistency and sort of recognition of things that are quintessentially NEAR.
So, I mean, it sounds like you've seen, a lot of success with it, but would you say it has created value for you a little bit deeper down?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with all rebrands, I think there's always a little bit of uncomfortableness right at the start. People are attached to some of the old culty things that made that ecosystem what it is. But I think it's been hugely transformational for NEAR. I think, we've set ourselves apart. We've got the infinite grid, as you mentioned, and our whole thing is stepping into the open web, say at NEARCON, and we believe in the open web for NEAR, and I think that really ties into that narrative. It's like, well, yeah, you have the grid, which is infinite, your possibilities are infinite, and you can build whatever you want on top of that. And I think we really showcase that with a lot of stuff we do here. And using a different type of color palette, different type of approach, different shapes, I think we sort of cemented our mark on something that's really unique and really like quintessentially NEAR. Like you say, you can put everything that we do out in front of each other, and you can see it all looks the same. It all looks NEAR. It all feels NEAR. And again, using some more of the sort of pastel colors and things that you're seeing everywhere, I just find that a lot more accessible to people and open to people. And I think that's one thing in Web3 we all sort of fall into is, the same sort of thinking. And it sort of, by doing that, alienates everyone else around you. And so that's, I think it's had a lot of value from that point of view, being able to almost look at something and go, oh yeah, that's near, without even having to think about it really.
Interesting. So what would your view be on the sort of importance of getting brand right for Web3? I mean, we've talked about, there being kind of codes that have been borrowed from other, perhaps passions of folks involved. But where do you sort of see Web3 moving, visually? How important do you think it is?
I have seen a lot of other ecosystems move out of that culty feel, and I think that's because people realize that, we need to broaden our reach. Web3 is still really, really small, and yet we have such grand visions. All of us, all ecosystems have such grand visions, and so I think people are starting to realize that to be able to access those founders, access those developers who, almost feel alienated by that, I think is all of our responsibility, and I think a lot of people have realized that. I would also add that for NEAR, this rebrand has generated a lot of excitement in the community, right? It's almost like a rallying point for people to do something that's a bit more out there, and gives people almost like this permission to think differently as well. I think that we'll see more and more projects over time build sort of unique systems that tell their own story in a different way to what everyone else around them is doing. And I encourage anyone in the NEAR ecosystem and even beyond to really consider a lot of this thought, because, like I say, it has such an amazing impact or the possibility is amazing for your organization, and really can add a lot of value to you moving forward. So,
fantastic. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Tom.
How are we doing?
That is the danger clock. We're now over time.
That's a danger clock?
It is,
right,
yeah.
Okay. What happens when that goes off?
I don't know. I don't like to see it, but we should probably hop off.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Good man.